Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
For the 11th time in just 20 years as a softball program, the Alabama Crimson Tide is headed to Oklahoma City for the Women's College World Series at ASA Stadium. The Crimson Tide boarded the plane in Tuscaloosa today for the flight to OKC. Alabama will play its first game on Thursday night against Oklahoma. That's become quite a rivalry, and WVUA 23 Sports will be there. Brandon Cameraman and Zach Tiger will be bringing you the latest from OKC beginning on Thursday, so that will be a lot of fun. And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris, and tonight, again, it's Diet Pepsi Wild Cherry. Somebody actually said to me the other day, because, I drink it on my radio show, too. And said, you've lost a few pounds. Are you going to go back to regular Pepsi? And I said, well, after a few more, probably, yeah. But
well,
right now,
compliment like that make you want to keep on.
Yeah, right now we're going to stick with Diet Pepsi. Remember to pick up some great Pepsi products the next time you're at your local grocer from Buffalo Rock. Terrific sponsor of this program. Well, we'll talk more softball in a moment, but we're going to start, Rodney, with the big news in baseball and the resignation of head coach Mitch Gaspard after 7 seasons. Yesterday, the Tide learned that it will miss the NCAA tournament for the second straight year. And shortly after the selection show was over, the athletic department released a statement that Gaspard had resigned. In his 7 seasons as head coach, Gaspard's Alabama teams were 41 games over 500 overall, but 20 games under 500 in the SEC. Now, Mitch led the Tide to 4 NCAA regionals and 1 super regional. That was his first season, though, in 2010, when they came within just a few outs of going to the College World Series as they lost that heartbreaking super regional at Clemson in 3 games. But, Rodney, I think a lot of people felt like that this was the make-or-break year for Mitch Gaspard. He had gotten into the new stadium. The team was energized and excited, got off to a fast start, as was fairly common under Mitch Gaspard. Got off to a quick start in the SEC. But you know what? It's hard to pinpoint just one series, but it might have all come down to that final series. Alabama went to Arkansas after winning 2 out of 3 against Auburn and swept the Razorbacks. They were 15-12 in the SEC and came home to play South Carolina, a good ball club. Right, if they just win 1 game in that series, they get to 16 wins. Probably enough to get them in a regional, but they got swept.
Well, I think what you're talking about, Gary, is it just never really seemed they could get over the hump. I mean, it looked like they were on the brink of it a few times. As you mentioned, they started out extremely well and then, hit a lull. And it seemed like that they could never just quite get over the hump. They had that sweep, as you mentioned, came back against South Carolina, got swept. That's just kind of indicative of the way it went.
I feel like we're doing the Anthony Grant story part 2, because I liked Anthony Grant. I thought he was a gentleman. I thought he was a great guy. Mitch was a little more personable than Anthony Grant, but he was a terrific gentleman. First class all the way. You liked him. I liked him. A pleasure to deal with. Loyal to a fault, maybe. Keeping Andy Phillips after last season as the hitting coach, when I think there were a lot of people that felt like a change should have been made there. Alabama has struggled offensively the past few years, but he was loyal to his guys. Phillips had played for him when he was an assistant to Jim Wells. Dax Norris had played here on some of those first really good teams that Jim Wells had, and Dax did a good job as the pitching coach and when he was the hitting coach. But Mitch Gaspard never compromised who he was as an individual and as a man, and I respect that. And for him to go ahead and say, I'm resigning because the time is right for me and for Alabama, I think that's a courageous step.
And I think he felt just like I said a while ago, Gary. He just couldn't quite get it over the hump for whatever reasons. And, I think you're exactly right. Mitch Gaspard's a great guy. I think he's a really good coach. Thought he had great recruiting skills, great evaluation skills when he took over the job. I thought he was a tremendous evaluator. I thought he related really well, extremely well to the players. So the way this thing kind of has ended with his resignation, I'd say I'm surprised. I mean, I thought that, he was going to be highly successful here. I thought he was going to build upon what Coach Wells had done. And again, I want to be clear. I think there's a lot of uphill battles that this program faces in terms of the recruiting, because the other states that have the Hope program.
Scholarships is totally different landscape.
Absolutely.
It's completely unfair. SEC, somebody, NCAA has to do something about this at some point. And I heard some people on the radio show this morning say, well, I'm making excuses. No, I'm not. 11.7 for Alabama. When you factor in what LSU, Georgia, Florida, some others have to work with, it's more like they have 18 or 20 scholarships.
Well, it would be just like football.
Yeah.
I mean, what if Alabama could play with 65 and everybody else could play with 80? I mean, obviously there's a difference, and I think that's certainly been an uphill battle. It was an uphill battle for Jim Wells. I mean, I know early in his tenure, he certainly had an outstanding program, one of the top 5 programs in the country. 2 years in a row, they were ranked number 1 heading into the College World Series. So I think it can be done here, but I think there are some limitations due to the hope.
Well, that will be for a new head coach to battle, and that will be for a discussion for another time as Alabama now turns the page. Next week we'll talk much more about who might wind up being the new head coach at Alabama if one hasn't already been named by that time. Well, the Alabama softball team rolled through the Tuscaloosa Regional a week and a half ago. Then Washington was the next victim in the Super Regionals this past weekend. The 5 straight wins earned the Crimson Tide a spot in the Women's College World Series. Alabama will open with Oklahoma on Thursday night at 6, and the Tide is excited about another run at a national championship.
I don't think that there's any way to kind of forget that feeling. Like every time you step on the field, you get that adrenaline, you get that fire. You're going to be nervous, you're going to be anxious, but it's just an honor to be there. It's a really exciting atmosphere. It's really great for the sport, and I think we're a little more experienced than maybe some teams out there, and I think that's to our advantage, and hopefully it works for us.
Florida didn't make it. 3 other SEC teams did: Auburn, LSU, and Georgia. Georgia knocked out Florida, but I don't think Alabama could have gotten a tougher draw. What is it about Alabama and Oklahoma?
Something about it. I tell you, how about a couple of, 2012? Is that when they played in the national championship series there? And what a way that game. Yeah. At the end when the rain and all of those things, all the inclement weather that came into play there, and Alabama ended up winning the championship. And then last year absolutely.
Run you in the Grand Slam walk-off. But Oklahoma's really
Alabama's
good.
Had their number.
And you're basically playing them on their home field. Yeah. I mean, they're 50 miles from Norman. So.
But again, just a few years ago, that's right. They took it. So
we'll see what happens beginning Thursday. Again, WVUA 23 Sports will be there. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Nick Saban laid down the law at the SEC spring meetings in Destin today. See why his latest rant deserved a fist slam. You don't want to miss it. Plus, there are plenty of new Tiders in Tuscaloosa for the 2016 fall semester already here. We'll talk about those new football players. And coming up, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again this week, it's that time of the year where a lot of people don't want to call in, so the phone lines will be open. This will be a good opportunity for you at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us there at the address on the screen, or you can send us a question or comment through Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The award-winning Tider Insider TV will return right after this. Well, after several seasons at Foster Auditorium, the Alabama women's basketball team is returning to Coleman Coliseum for the 2016-2017 season. Alabama played at Coleman from 1981 through 2011, but after renovations at Foster Auditorium, the legendary facility, the team moved its home games there in February of 2011. While the Crimson Tide will share the Coliseum with the men's team for home games, the women's basketball team will still have its practices at Foster, and the coaches will still have their offices there. And volleyball, of course, will continue to compete at Foster Auditorium. Well, welcome back to Tider Insider TV. The weather is heating up. It's a good time to hit the beaches, and that's what the SEC did today for the beginning of the SEC spring meetings at Sandestin. And yet, despite the nearby Gulf of Mexico and the relaxing locale, Nick Saban was anything but tranquil when asked again about satellite camps.
Why should we be promoting somebody else's camp anywhere? Because it's the same thing I said before. This is the only sport where the high school coach still matters. What they did at the high school mattered. So all you're doing is allowing all these other people that we spend all of our time at the NCAA saying, you can't recruit through a third party. You can't be involved with third party people. And that's exactly what you're doing. Creating all these third parties that's going to get involved with the prospects and all that. And then who gets exposed on that? I go to a camp, and I'm talking to some guy I don't know from Adams House Cat, and he's representing some kid because he put the camp on. And then I'm in trouble for talking to this guy? And who even knows if the guy paid to go to the camp? Is the NCAA going to do that? I mean, we do that at our camp. We have people responsible for that.
Rodney, what's really funny, and thanks to AL.com for that video, is I watched the entire sequence, and the first thing he said was, I'm not going to talk about satellite cams. But we've heard him say that before. And then once he got started, he unloaded. But I tell you what, I'm in agreement. We don't need them. College football was fine without them. It does bring in a quote-unquote AAU-type element to it where you can have a lot of people who aren't their high school coaches that are involved in handling this thing. There's a lot of different ways to get publicity for young men that want to play football. I don't like the satellite camps at all. They're here, but I'm with Saban on this one.
Well, we've talked about it many times. I said from the very beginning, I don't like the idea. I thought it was way too much. You know, you have these 5-star challenges, Gary, where these prospects go to these locations and gather there and have their combines and camps. That's plenty. That's more than enough, if you ask me. I really don't like those things either. Of course, they don't have anything really to do with the schools, but you know, I think it's way too much, and I agree with him completely. I wish they didn't have them, and it's going to be interesting to see how long they will have them.
Yeah, Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, talking about this afternoon the possibility of an SEC-sponsored satellite camp. Maybe that'll be a good thing and just get everybody under kind of one, roof, so to speak. All right, Roddy, it's summer school. And classes are underway. The University of Alabama campus is filling up with new Crimson Tide students, and that includes freshman football players, many of whom may play big roles in the Tide success this fall. Of the new enrollees, of course, some went through spring, so we're not going to really talk about them. Guys that are coming on campus this summer, anybody that you think might have an impact on the team in year one?
Well, I mean, it's always difficult to tell because these guys haven't even really worked out. There you see Raekwon Davis. Now, this guy, when you look at him physically, I mean, he looks like an NFL guy. Look at him running off the field.
He's
right
mad.
there. Can you believe that? A high school kid? You know, I think Trevon Diggs is an outstanding player. He's come in, Gary. He is a multi-talented athlete, could play wide receiver or in the secondary. I think he's ticketed for wide receiver at first, so Billy Napier will get his opportunity to work with him. I really think the guy to watch out for, though, is B.J. Emmons, a running back out of North Carolina. I think given Alabama's depth at running back or lack thereof, I think that he has a really good shot to make an impact. There you see Ben Davis of Gordo.
Yeah, he could be a guy
I think he's a guy, when you're talking about the depth at inside linebackers really not that good right now, I think it allows him an opportunity to come in and compete. He has size, he has speed. Of course, there's a lot to learn, but if he's anything like his dad, who's the all-time leading tackler in Alabama football history, I mean, he started as a true freshman from day one. I don't think Ben's going to do that, but I think Ben may be a better athlete.
A lot of new talent coming into T-Town, as is the case every summer. Well, coming up, Robbie Shelton had a nice finish at the Alabama in the NCAA championships. We'll check out the highlights from the NCAA men's golf championships coming up. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, phone lines are open at 205-348-WVUA. Don't leave Rodney and I hanging. Don't leave Rodney hanging. He hates it when you don't call. He gives me a hard time about it. 205-348-9882 is the number. TITV at WVUA23.com is the email address. And you can ask us a question or leave a comment on Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with phone calls right after this. For the third time in his illustrious career at Alabama, men's golfer Robbie Shelton, a first-team All-American. That comes a day after he finished in a tie for 6th place at the NCAA Men's Golf Individual Championships at Eugene, Oregon. The Crimson Tide as a team, though, had a disappointing 23rd place finish with Robbie Shelton, one of the best in the country. All right, Rodney, let's head to the phone lines. People have responded because I know I don't want you getting upset. Let's go to Moundville and talk to Dale. Dale, welcome into the program. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are y'all doing, guys?
Very well.
I have a granddaughter that's playing organized basketball, and
right.
I've become a big Alabama women's basketball fan. And, you know, I've been to a lot of the games this past year, and I've seen Alabama compete against teams that was more physical and more athletic. And I'll tell you, if you just ask Tennessee coach and the Texas A&M coach if they'd like to come into Foster Auditorium, I guarantee you that wouldn't be one of the most popular places that they'd want to play. And, you know, to me, now moving them back, you're taking a step back because you're going to lose that hometown atmosphere and that energy that they had in Foster Auditorium. I don't understand. I'm a little disappointed that they're going back to the Coleman Coliseum.
Well, let me elaborate on that for you, Dale, and I'll tell you why they're doing it. And a lot of what you said I agree with. I mean, you put 3,000 fans in Foster Auditorium, they can raise the roof. Put 3,000 in Coleman, it's like they're bugs. Having said that, if you don't play in your biggest building, it's used against you in recruiting. Other schools say, hey, women's basketball is not important at Alabama. They're not even in the main arena. They're in a little small auditorium. So I think that's the reason. I think it's all about the impression that you're taking women's basketball just as serious as the men's game. Perception is reality, and I think that's why they want to play in the men's building. I do like Foster when you got a few thousand people in there. You can rock it. I've been there.
Well, what if you go into a big arena and you only have a sprinkling of fans? I mean, can't you say then, look, the empty seats, Alabama doesn't take women's basketball seriously?
Well, I guess the idea is to play winning basketball and get more fans.
Well, that's right. I would play winning basketball and get more fans first.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what they're. Why can't you play some of your games in Foster and then play the big teams in Coleman? But they're going to Coleman. It is a done deal. But I think that's the reason. Let's go to Birmingham and talk to Jim. Jim, welcome in the program. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Very well.
My question is this: we're big Alabama fans all the way,
right?
And why are we limited? My first question on baseball scholarships. I didn't understand what y'all just said earlier. And is Dave Madigan, could he be considered for the head baseball coach?
All right, let me explain it to you, Jim. Every team, NCAA Division I baseball team, gets 11.7 scholarships to fill the entire roster. How they break those up is their business. Some players may get 60%. Very rarely does anybody get 100%. You might offer one guy books and tuition. You might offer another guy room and board, however you do it. The disadvantage Alabama has is the lottery states, many of whom I already named, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, on, is a lot of their baseball players in that state that they are from qualify for the lottery scholarships, the Hope scholarships. They go to school. It does not count against their 11.7 total. So then they have more. For example, let's say Alabama recruits a pitcher from Hoover, Vestavia, Mountain Brook, wherever, Pell City it might be. He's a big-time prospect. Alabama's doing everything off 11.7. They offer the kid 60%. Georgia says, well, we got 6 guys coming in from in-state, not costing us a dime. Let's go offer that kid 85% or 90% or 100%. That's the disadvantage. There's nothing you can do about it because there's no lottery in the state of Alabama, but the SEC, the NCAA could increase the number of scholarships overall, and I think that would level the playing field. Let's say you went to 15. I think it would help Alabama. That's an example of what I'm talking about.
Good explanation.
Think I explained it well?
Very well.
Yeah, so it's one thing if Alabama had a lottery, maybe they could help themselves out that way, but they don't. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more phone calls right after this. And welcome back to TITV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Real quickly, Jim had also asked about Dave Magadan, who's the hitting instructor for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I could see his name being tossed around here in Tuscaloosa for the job of Alabama baseball coach. You got to remember, though, he's working in the big leagues. So I don't know, but I certainly know that there are some people like you, Jim, that would love to hear Dave Magadan's name mentioned in association with that job. Let's go back to the phone lines and talk to Leroy and Coker. Hey, Leroy, what's up, man?
Oh, yes, Gary, I was looking on the news the other afternoon. It said that Alabama's opponent, Oklahoma, was loaded from top to bottom with power hitters and great players.
Right.
I was wondering why Coach Murphy can't get the stick power that he used to have years ago. He don't seem to have nobody but slappers. Very few home run hitters, just slappers mostly.
Well, Leroy, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I mean, they just won 50-plus games and didn't lose a game in the regional or the super regional. They're going to the Women's College World Series. I mean, I guess maybe you want them to hit more home runs. I can see that. Lafayette's got 15. Dykes has got some power. Runyon hit 19 last year. She's had an off year. I think it's important, though, to have speed at the top of the lineup and speed at the bottom of your lineup. Again, we'll see what happens out there in Oklahoma City, but I have a hard time arguing with the formula, to be honest with you, Leroy. No disrespect to you, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, 20 years as a program, 11 trips to the College World Series. Maybe, they could hit some more home runs, but, I mean, they're really good.
Yeah,
really good team.
I think there's been a few years where what he's saying probably holds water because, when they played Florida a couple of times a few years ago when Florida really had some sticks and Alabama just had a difficult time. They did not have enough firepower to really handle Florida. But I think when you look at the way Alabama plays the game, it's just their style. And you talk about Oklahoma being loaded. Well, Alabama just beat Oklahoma last year.
And just beat Florida 2 or 3 this year in Gainesville.
So, I mean, I just think it's what you do, how you play it. You play your way the best you can. And I think what Alabama does and the way they do it, I just think that right now they're doing it really well. And Oklahoma does what they do.
Yeah, we'll see. On Thursday night, Alabama, as Rodney said, beat them for the national championship in 2012, beat them in the Super Regional last year, beat Florida 2-3. Florida sitting at home with all that power that they've got. So we'll see what happens. But I have a hard time arguing with what Patrick Murphy does every year. All right, let's go to Cordova and talk to John. John, how are you, man?
Good.
What's up?
My question is two questions. One is, when is the media days, and the other one is Nick Saban came closer to a quarterback, and who do you think he'll choose?
Your first question was who's going to media days?
Like, my first question is when is media day?
Okay, media day starts July the 11th. We don't know who Alabama's taking yet, other than Nick Saban. We'll announce that when we get the information. I don't think they're any closer to a quarterback, John, because, spring practice has ended. So we probably won't get much more of a feel for who the quarterback's going to be until we open fall camp. I don't think you're going to hear anything this summer in regards to who the quarterback's going to be.
Yep. I think the way it ended spring practice, John, I think Cooper Bateman's the guy right now. I think, again, when you go into fall camp, August camp, I think he's going to have to solidify his position there. But I think there's three guys that are going to be really competing. I think all four of them have an opportunity to win the job. You're talking about David Cornwell, Blake Barnett, and I really think the true freshman Jalen Hurts, I think he's a fantastic talent. I think I'd keep an eye on him because I don't know that he'll win the job, Gary, but I won't be surprised if he plays.
All right, thanks for the phone calls. We'll be back right after this. After 17 years of calling some of the most memorable college football games, Vern Lundquist is putting down the mic, at least for SEC football games. Lundquist, it was announced today by CBS, will be announcing his last year of SEC football in 2016. He'll still call golf and college basketball after that. Brad Nessler will take over the CBS booth in 2017. Well, our beautiful shirts is always provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original elephant wear. You can shop in person or you can go online and shop as well. Let me just tell you something. I love the new building down there, just downtown. And, of course, obviously the clothing is top-notch. Pay them a visit either in person or online and get hooked up in the original elephant wear like Rodney and I are wearing tonight. Well, that is going to do it for the program. If you missed the show, we'll have a replay tonight at 10:30, or you can catch it online at WVUA23.com. So for Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.